And I'm talking about legally because there is a technical illegal option here in Iceland that some people do use. Hey everyone, it's Jules, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the top things that I miss when it comes to living in the United States. I did a video that kind of took off talking about why I don't plan to move back to the United States after living in Iceland for over 5 years. And of course some people had questions about, is there anything that you miss about the US and things of that nature. So I figured I at least would share that. Of course, when I mention these things, some people might be like, well, of course in Iceland this isn't like this. But this is just to kind of share, at least from my perspective, things that were convenient in the US or like that I really enjoyed. And am I expecting Iceland to necessarily have this? Not really. It would be nice, but that's just kind of how life is. You learn to adjust to things. And so this is just more on the side of things that I can think of that were appealing to me in the US that it would be nice to have, for sure. So the first one has to do with mass transit or like ride sharing. So there are taxis here in Iceland, there's a bus system, and that is something that I used. So for the first 2 years of living in the country, I was basically taking the bus everywhere through all types of weather. And while the system isn't perfect, it worked fine for me for the time period, and it is something that many people use every day. So there definitely is that option here in Iceland. And taxi-wise, that is really expensive because I live on the outskirts of Reykjavik. I live in Mosfellsbær, and you can see behind me the beautiful Mount Asia. There's lots of nature in this particular neighborhood, even though we are moving, which is a whole nother story, and I'll get into that in a later video. But the whole point is that there isn't the ability to have like access to Uber or Lyft, which is a less expensive option for many people in cities in different countries. And it seems to be that at the moment that is not going to be available for the foreseeable future. I don't know if that will change. It does make it a little bit more different if you do want to get a card ride from Reykjavik to somewhere else and not pay so much money. And I'm talking about legally because there is a technical illegal option here in Iceland that some people do use. But being able to take like the subway somewhere and that it runs like 24 hours, which it does in New York City, is convenient and nice. So that's just something that I do miss. But like I mentioned, there are some options here, and sometimes also having a person who's like the sober driver to drive you somewhere, like my husband, for instance, can be super useful. But those are people who have that option. And for many others, though, you just kind of have to work around it or live in the downtown area. The second thing that was really convenient and that I really liked about living in the US, especially in like a bigger city, is that the banks and the post office were open at more convenient hours. So here, a lot of the banks or the post office, they close around the time when the end of the workday is done. So many people go during their lunch hour, or they find some time during their workday in order to go and utilize these services. Even on the weekend, these services are not usually available, meaning like going to speak to a person or go to a teller or something like that. And I really do miss that. It was very convenient for me because when my work schedule wasn't as flexible, it was a little bit harder for me to find time to get out and go and do these services during my day. But it just seems that in Iceland, for many people, they're used to doing this, so I don't know if it will ever change. And while it can seem like a small thing, it for me is something that I think about kind of often sometimes, being like, it would be nice for this thing to have been open an hour longer, or at least have like 2 or 3 hours on the weekend in which I can go there and utilize the service. The third thing I miss about living in the United States has to do with the food. Food and alcohol being less expensive. And of course that depends on where you live. I do understand that. But in Iceland, it's very, very expensive for both of those items. And it surprises me when I go to the US and I go shopping and I'm like, wow, I can buy all of these things, or go to like a happy hour and get like an actual decent deal on some drinks, and ordering things from different shops and how fast it can get there. Like these kind of conveniences, like I mentioned, that yeah, it's not necessarily here in Iceland and you do get adjusted to it, but it is really nice to be able to have it. And my money goes a lot farther for me in the US when I go to visit, because I can get things for less of a price. To be fair, you know, there are aspects that I say to myself, like, it makes sense and it's fine. And still at the same time though, it is nice to not have to spend so much when I go to the US to visit and buy things. The fourth thing that I miss about living in the US, and this might be more geared towards those who live in larger cities, has to do with diversity. And I like, in terms of diversity of thought, you know, of course, diversity in culture, all of those things kind of get mixed in to bigger places where people are gravitating towards. And while Reykjavik is growing, it's still very small. And there's diversity here for sure, but it's just on a smaller scale. So jumping into a place like on the East Coast in New York or something, or even on the West Coast, where you can really get so many types of people that are available to you is awesome. And I love that. So it's just an aspect that I get to enjoy when I go back. And it's something that I think I will always enjoy, the abilities to interact with so many different types of people from many walks of life. And of course, all of these are in addition to the fact that I would miss my family and friends that are in the US. But those are the things that were top of mind for me, at least that came up. If you live in another country, I would love to know what are the things that you miss about your home country, whether it's from the US or somewhere else in the world. Feel free to let me know in the comments. If you were going to move to another country, what do you think that you would miss? What's one of those things you'd be like, oh man, I really wish, you know, they had this particular thing or whatever else if you were to move to another place like Iceland. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, as well as share it with anyone that you think would find it interesting or fun to watch. And for more insightful videos about Iceland and my life here, as well as travel, culture, history, and language, definitely make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on all the awesome content that I have coming your way. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.